With the opening of the Olympics some days ago, you saw a lot of pageantry and a lot of celebration, and about over 200 countries came in waving their own flags, but it was all under the flag of the Olympics, which is those 5 rings all strung together, representing the 5 continents of the earth. And it was just a wonderful kind of thing to see that kind of universality expressed, because we don't often see that, do we? And things like when one athlete from one country might lose, it wasn't unusual to see them go and congratulate the person from another country who did win. And it's kind of a thing where they keep politics down, and I think they've done a good job of that, keeping the politics out of it and saying we're here, people, brothers and sisters, to celebrate our time together and working in sports and having fun and competing. That's great. That universality is really what Jesus is talking about today in the gospel in that one line. You know, the word Catholic means universal. We all know that. So in the first reading, we heard them say that people will come from all nations, and they're all welcome in. In the gospel, Jesus says they'll come from the east and the west and the north and the south, and they all come into the kingdom of God. Everybody is welcome, and just need to remember that God made us all for himself. He made us all to enter the kingdom. That's wonderful. Now, there's only one caution. Caution is that to get into the kingdom, we need to enter through a narrow door. Some things you can't take through that narrow door. You're all welcome. You just got to go through this door, and it's a narrow one. It's not an unusual type of a thing to demand, because anybody who gets to compete in the Olympics spends a lot of time, blood, sweat, and tears training for it. Now, I was an athlete many years ago. I was much younger. I played college sports, and I understand what it takes to play those kinds of sports. Kind of discipline, exercise and practice. That's nothing compared to what the people who participate in the Olympics have to do. We might well know that. It's a grueling kind of a thing. People put in the effort, the blood, the sweat, and the tears all into it, and some of them don't make it to the Olympics. But for those who do, they come together. And it doesn't happen by accident. And it won't happen by accident if the world ever gets to a place where it is a world of justice and peace. We're not doing so well at that. You know, we tend to put more effort into looking out just for our own interests and reacting to violence with violence and carrying on wars and making some decisions which perhaps aren't the best ones. And not just us, but throughout the world. There's a lot of hostility in the world, and it won't happen by accident. We're going to have to try and change what we do. Take a lot of discipline to get to that point. And we don't become virtuous people just by accident. It doesn't just happen. I woke up this morning, and I was a virtuous person. This is not to say that we don't all have some natural virtue, which we do. We're made in the image and likeness of God. There is natural virtue within us. It could be patience, generosity, temperance, all sorts of stuff. Wonderful kinds of things that live within us. And they're just kind of a natural thing. What might come naturally to someone, let's say patience comes naturally to this person, and maybe generosity comes naturally to that one. Now that's great. That's part of who we are. And I'm positive that for all of us, there is that area where we struggle. Someone might say, I struggle with anger. And someone else might say, because of the deprivation of my early life, I now struggle with generosity. Whatever it is we struggle with. And in order to become a better person, we need some discipline to get there. It doesn't happen by accident. We need to go through that narrow door. And in order to go through that narrow door, we have to get rid of what keeps us out. The opposite of the virtues that can live within us. I once knew a man who I thought he was kind of a happy, positive kind of a guy. And I said, well, you always seem to be kind of up, and you're real positive. He said, yeah, well, that wasn't always the case. And I went, what, really? He says, yeah. He says, I used to be a cynic and critic. He says, in fact, I developed my cynicism to an art form. I could get people laughing, but it was negative humor. And I knew how to criticize anybody. I could be with somebody for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and come out with something to say about them that was critical. So, well, what happened? He said, someday a lady came up and talked to me, and she was actually gentle about it, but told me how cynical and critical I was. And I thought about that. And I decided I didn't want to be that kind of person. And don't we all have to make that decision? What kind of person do I want to be? That isn't a question which is for the young. It is a question for everybody and every day. When I wake up in the morning, what kind of person do I want to be today? And then, how am I going to get there? It takes choice, it takes discipline, and it takes practice. So this guy said, so I decided that I needed to become more grateful. And when I got to tell you, I began to see some of the blessings in my life, and I was a happier guy. And I noticed when I was critical what it did to people and what the look on their face, so I decided to be affirming. And decided to try to think of something affirming and positive, complimentary for somebody else, and now I just love the look in their eye when I say something like that. Says, went through that little door, that narrow door, and came out the other side, and life opened up for him because of the discipline that changed his life, to make that choice. And that is what Jesus is saying. You need to come through that narrow door and change. Make those choices and practice. The problem today is there are so many other doors, I think, than there were ever before to go through that say, come in this door, come in this one. We promise you that there will be satisfaction and pleasure, and it's going to be instant. Do I need to mention specifics? No? Okay, we're good. Otherwise I'd go longer. But we know what those doors are. And we enter in through them. And we find out, like this guy said, it ended up in a dead end. And it was destructive. And if we go through that door, those kinds of things which promise instant, kind of gratification, pleasure, success, or whatever, it's like, think about where it's going to take us. Just follow it through. If I keep doing this, what's my life going to be like? Like this critical guy. People are starting to back away from him. What's my life going to be like? What choice can I make to make it better? Now, unfortunately, all of us, at one time or another, and over again sometimes, we go through those doors, those wide doors that come on in here, and we find out we get lost in life. We don't know what life's about anymore, why we're here. And those are the ones who need the invitation, to hear the invitation of the call of God to come on back. Jesus Christ wants you to come to that door. He wants you to come to that door so he can forgive and that he can heal. And we can walk through that door and with some discipline and his grace make something more out of our lives. That's what the invitation is. That's what Jesus is talking about in the gospel. It's a narrow gate. But once you go through it, your life opens up and we end up in abundance. So if we are lost, or if we get lost again by going through the wrong door, we need to hear Jesus' call back to his gate, his narrow door, and let go of everything that keeps us away from it. Struggle though we do, God's grace is there to help us. I love that closing verse in that second reading, Hebrews, where it says, "So strengthen your drooping hand and your weak knees. Make straight paths for your feet, that what is lame may not be disjointed, but healed." That's the kind of life that Christ calls us. Walk through that door. We begin to realize even more the grace and the life for which we were made.